Okay, 13.1. This is just a short little chapter on trig functions. Some of you after Algebra 2 are going to move on to either pre-calculus and trig or college algebra and trig. So you would have seen this anyway at the geometry level. We're going to learn the 6 trig functions today, and these are the 6 trig functions. We're going to talk about this angle right here. We'll call this angle theta or x or whatever you want to use. In trig we use a Greek letter to remind you of an angle. This is the side opposite of that angle. This is the side adjacent to that angle. And the side opposite the 90 degrees is called the hypotenuse. So I think you guys have heard of so, ka, toa. Sine, which is S, sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, and that's why it's O over H. Cosine, abbreviated cosine, sine is abbreviated sine, is A over H, which is adjacent over hypotenuse. And then the last one, tangent, right here, abbreviated tangent, is the O over the A, or the opposite over adjacent. Okay, now we're going to talk about the other three, which are reciprocals of these other two. So sine and cosecant, CSC for short, is cosecant, and they're just reciprocals of each other. So it's hypotenuse over the opposite. Cosine and secant are reciprocals of each other. So instead of adjacent over hypotenuse, it's hypotenuse over adjacent. And then tangent and cotangent are reciprocals of each other. Opposite over adjacent, reciprocal is adjacent over opposite. Those are called the 6 trig functions. You also need a calculator today, so hopefully you have one handy, and if you don't, you might want to shut it off and go get your calculator and then restart this. But you definitely need a calculator today. Okay, these three are on your calculator: sine, cosine, and tangent. These three are not, and you don't need them anyway on your calculator. But I will ask you to find all 6 of them on the test. Tangent and cotangent kind of go hand in hand with each other because they have the name tangent and cotangent in them. They're reciprocals of each other. These two, a lot of people get mixed up, so this is the way I remember it. Cosine ends in S. Its reciprocal starts with S, so that you don't get it mixed up. That's why cosine and secant are reciprocals of each other. One ends in S and one starts with S. So, okay, so the first part of the assignment is this. They're going to give you a triangle. And what you have to do is you have to name the sine of theta, the cosine of theta, and the tangent of theta. You also have to name the reciprocal of sine, which is cosecant, the reciprocal of cosine, which is secant, and the reciprocal of tangent, which is cotangent. Sine, I'm just going to put so, ka, toa. So that's the formula. So, ka, toa. Hang on, there's a phone call. Hello? Yep, I gotta go. Taping. Bye. Sorry about that. So sine is opposite. So here's the angle that we're talking about. The side opposite is 8. Over the hypotenuse, which is opposite the 90 degrees, is 17. And if that's 8/17, this is 17 over 8. They're reciprocals of each other. Cosine is the adjacent. Well, this is the adjacent side, 15. Over the hypotenuse, across from 90 is 15/17. So secant is 17 over 15. And tangent is opposite, 8 over adjacent, 15. So this is 15 over 8. So that's the first part of your assignment. Okay, the next one's a little bit more difficult. They tell you that the tangent is 3/5 or 5/3, sorry. Tangent of angle A. We're talking this angle right here. We know the tangent is opposite over adjacent. So the opposite side of that angle is 5 and the adjacent side is 3. In order to find the missing side of this triangle, which is the hypotenuse, you have to use the famous Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A squared is 25 because that's 5 squared, and B squared is 3 squared, which is 9, which makes 34. But then you have to take the square root of 34. C is equal to the square root of 34. Okay, just a reminder, on radicals, we had a whole chapter on radicals. If it would have been the square root of 12, you cannot leave that. You have, this is made up of 2 2's and a 3. You have to write it as 2 root 3. You have to reduce radicals if you can, but in this problem you cannot reduce it. They want you to find the cosecant of A and the sine of A. So, you know that the sine of angle A is equal to opposite over that hypotenuse, which is 5 over root 34. And I'll reduce that in a minute. And then they also want you to find the cosecant of angle A. These two are reciprocals of each other. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip the sign. That one's done. But there's a rule in math that says you cannot leave a radical in the denominator. So this one you have to multiply by the top and the bottom by the square root of 35. 5 root 34 on the top, all over 34 on the bottom. Final answer. So if you have a radical, you have to do 2 things with the radical. If you have a radical, when you're working on this worksheet, you have to reduce it. You have to take pairs out. And another thing you'd have to do is get it out of the denominator by multiplying the top and the bottom by the radical. So that's 2 things if it turns out to be a radical. The first problem, this one right here, this one did not end up having a radical. This one has no radicals in it. So let's just do one more before we go on to the last part of the assignment. Let's just make up one more problem before we go on to the last part of the assignment. Let's make this a 4, and let's make this a 7. I'm trying to make this work. Let's make this a 3 instead. Let's make this a 7. Okay. Let's just let's find, this is theta right here. Let's find the sine of theta, the cosine of theta, and the tangent of theta. Let's also find the reciprocal of sine, which is cosecant, I'm sorry. Cosine is secant, and tangent is cotangent. So we're doing exactly what we just got done doing. A squared plus B squared equals C squared will help us find the missing side, but we are given the hypotenuse, and that'll give you 49. We're given one of the sides. So B squared is going to equal 40 because I subtract 9, but square root. This is made up of 2, 2, and 10, which is the same thing as 2 root 10, which is going to go right here, and that is in the reduced form. Remember that 10 is made up of a 2 and a 5. There's not double of anything. So you have to reduce it to 2 root 10. So, once I have my triangle set, I'm going to do the O and the H, the A and the H, and the O over the A. I like to put the so, ka, toa. So the sign is opposite 2 root 10 over the hypotenuse, which is 7. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is 2 root 10 opposite over adjacent, which is 3. Okay, so far so good. Look to see if any one of them has a radical in the denominator, which they don't, so we're good. I'm going to do the middle one first, which is the easiest one. Just flip it. And now I'm going to do these two. It's going to be 7 over 2 root 10. But you can't leave a radical in the denominator, so I have to multiply the top and the bottom by root 10, which is going to give me, I'm going to just write it up here, 7 root 10 on the top. This is going to end up being a 10 times 2, which ends up being 20 for your final answer. And when I flip this one, it's going to be 3 over 2 root 10, but you can't leave a radical in the denominator, so you have to multiply the top and the bottom by root 10. So you get 3 root 10 divided by, this makes a 10 times 2, which is 20. You can't leave a radical in the denominator. So, okay, now we're moving on to the last part. We have to either find the side or the angle on the second part of the assignment. In this problem, we're trying to find the side. We're given the adjacent side and the hypotenuse side. So we're going to use the cosine of 60 degrees because we know the adjacent and the hypotenuse is x divided by 12. So then all you're going to do is go onto your calculator, and I want you to plug in the cosine of 60 onto your calculator. And when you hit the cosine of 60 on your calculator, it's going to equal a half equals x over 12. In order to get x alone, all I'm going to do is multiply by 12. So x is equal to 6. So this side is 6. And that's how you do sides. Let's do another one. How do you find the side? Let's do another one right here. Let's do another side. Well, we know that this is the angle, and we know the side opposite, and we know the side adjacent. So we're going to do the tangent of 52 degrees because we know the side opposite over the adjacent. So all you're going to do is find the tangent of 52 and multiply both sides by 6 to find what x is. Tangent of 52 times 6, which is 7.7. So that's how you find the side, just using your sine, cosine, or tangent button. You have a sine button, you have a cosine button, and you have a tangent button. Those help you come up with the sides. You also have a sine inverse button, a cosine inverse button, and a tangent inverse button. And those help you come up with your angle. Everybody see the difference? The main buttons help you find the sides, and the numbers up above are the buttons, the sine inverse, cosine inverse, and tangent inverse helps you get the angle. For example, this one right here. We're trying to find the angle. We know the side opposite and the hypotenuse, so we're going to use the sine because that's what's given. Find the sine of x over 815. So everybody locate the sine button on your calculator. But we need this button because this button gets us the angle. And this button helps us find the sides. So everybody hit your second sine button. When you hit your second sine button, this should be now in your calculator. And all you have to do is put 815 in there and put a parenthesis and hit enter. 32.2 degrees is what this is. Go to the nearest tenths. 32.2 degrees. I think there's one more angle. I think it's right here. Find measure angle A. Find this angle right here. So I'm going to do the cosine of angle A, And the cosine of angle A is the side adjacent over the hypotenuse. Remember, the major button cosine will give you the side, but we're not finding the side. We need to find the angle. So go under cosine and hit second cosine, and now this should be showing up. And hit 14.4 divided by 17, and it'll give you 32.1. Let's do one more. This one's important. Let's say that this is 15 degrees and this is 5, and we're trying to find x. This is an important one, so watch carefully. If we're trying to find the side, remember, we just have to use the major buttons because we're trying to find the side. We're trying to find the side. Well, we know the side opposite and the adjacent, so we're going to do the tangent of 15. Side opposite over adjacent. See where the x is located? We need to multiply both sides by x in this problem. So now we have x tangent of 15 equals 5. So I had to get x out of the denominator by multiplying by x. So x is going to equal 5 divided by the tangent of 15. So why don't you plug in 5 divided by the tangent of 15 in there? And it's 18.7 is the side that we're looking for. Okay, so basically what did you learn? You learned the 6 trig functions. You're going to have to name the 6 trig functions, which is right here. There's 3 parts. The first part is naming the 6 trig functions, and watch out when there's radicals. The second part is, is either finding the side or the angle. And remember, these major buttons, the cosine, the sine, and the tangent will give you the side, and the ones up here will give you your angle. And that's all the notes for 13.1.